The emergency lights bathed the Galactic Senate's crystalline chamber in an eerie purple glow. High Counselor Vexterra, her translucent fins rippling with anxiety, watched the holographic display with all four of her eyes. The image showed another colony world going dark, consumed by what the Senate had dubbed the Void, a mysterious force that devoured both matter and energy, leaving nothing but empty space in its wake. 3 more systems lost in the past solar cycle, announced Sub-Commander Zinril, his metallic exoskeleton clicking as he moved to the center of the chamber. Our most advanced quantum barriers dissolve on contact. Energy weapons pass through it without effect. Even our finest minds cannot comprehend its fundamental nature. The assembled representatives of the Galactic Senate, over 200 species that had achieved interstellar travel, murmured in dismay. Their civilization had stood for 50,000 years, built on the principles of elegant technology and sophisticated energy manipulation. Now they faced something that defied their understanding of physics itself. What of the new species? Asked Counselor Mira X, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lights, the ones from the high-gravity world. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Everyone knew of whom she spoke, the humans. Discovered just 2 orbital cycles ago, they had caused quite a stir in the Senate. Their homeworld, Earth, had been classified as a Class 13 death world, a planet so hostile that most Senate species required full environmental suits just to survive its surface. The fact that it had produced sentient life at all defied conventional wisdom. "You cannot be serious," scoffed Representative Hulot, his gaseous form swirling with derision. "These primitives barely understand quantum mechanics. They still use chemical propulsion for their ships." High Counselor Vexterra raised a fin for silence. "And yet," she said softly, "they are the only species we've encountered who evolved on a world more hostile than the Void itself." The Senate chamber erupted in argument, but Vexterra's attention was drawn to the human representative standing quietly in the corner. Commander Sarah Chen hadn't said a word during the entire session, but there was something in her stance, a coiled readiness that reminded Vexterra of the apex predators from her own world's oceans. "Commander Chen," Vexterra called out, silencing the chamber, "your species has only recently joined the galactic community. Yet you've been remarkably calm during these proceedings. Why?" Sarah Chen stepped forward, her movements deliberate in the Senate's low gravity. Unlike the other representatives who floated or glided, she walked, each step a controlled assertion of mass and momentum that made several senators flinch. "On Earth," she said, her voice carrying clearly without technological amplification, "we have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Throughout our history, the most significant human advances came not from periods of peace and prosperity, but from times of crisis." She gestured to the holographic display, showing the advancing Void. "Your civilization has never faced an existential threat. You've never had to adapt or die. But humans, we evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Extreme temperatures, natural disasters, predators, diseases. Earth threw everything at us. And we didn't just survive. We thrived. And how exactly would this help against the Void?" asked Sub-Commander Zinril skeptically. Chen smiled, a gesture that displayed her teeth, a reminder that humans were one of the few species that evolved as pursuit predators. "Because while your civilization spent millennia perfecting energy manipulation, we spent our history learning to overcome the impossible. You see the Void as an unstoppable force because it defies your technology. We see it as just another challenge to overcome." She pulled up her own holoscreen, displaying images that made several senators recoil. Humans diving into ocean trenches, climbing frozen mountains, surviving in scorching deserts. Your species wait in orbital habitats, while robots terraform planets to your preferred conditions. We adapt ourselves to survive anywhere. You build better force fields. We build better methods to work without them. "Are you suggesting," Vexterra asked carefully, "that primitive technology might succeed where our advanced systems have failed?" I'm suggesting, Chen replied, that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. The void absorbs energy. Then let's fight it with mass and momentum. It destroys force fields. Then let's use physical barriers. It defies quantum mechanics. Then let's use classic physics. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans' seemingly primitive approaches might be exactly what they needed, not because they were less advanced, but because they were fundamentally different. High Counselor, Chen continued, humanity would like to propose a joint operation. Give us access to your FTL technology, and we'll show you how Deathworlders handle extinction-level threats. Vexterra studied the human carefully. In her species, stillness indicated decisive action about to be taken. She recognized that same quality in Chen now. And if we agree, what exactly do you propose? Chen's smile widened slightly. First, we're going to need volunteers who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. Then we're going to teach the Void why every species in Earth's history that tried to wipe out humanity ended up extinct themselves. The alien research team watched in fascination as Dr. Maya Rivero worked in her makeshift laboratory aboard the Senate flagship Genesis. Unlike their sterile, automated facilities, her lab was a chaos of physical equipment, glass beakers, metal tools, and mechanical devices that seemed archaic by galactic standards. Fascinating, muttered Chief Researcher Ktal, his crystalline form shifting colors with interest. You're attempting to study the void using purely mechanical means. Maya nodded, adjusting a simple microscope. Your quantum sensors can't detect it because they operate on principles the void nullifies. But this, she held up a sealed container with a small sample of void-touched matter. This we can study the old-fashioned way. The container itself was a testament to human ingenuity. Layers of physical barriers, each designed to fail in specific ways that would warn of containment breach. No energy fields, no quantum seals, just clever engineering and careful observation. Initial results suggest the void isn't actually destroying matter, Maya explained, making notes with an actual pencil, something that had shocked her alien colleagues. It's converting it into something our universe's physics can't properly interact with. But it leaves traces, physical distortions we can measure with simple tools. Across the ship, in what had once been a recreational deck, Commander Chen was overseeing a different kind of preparation. Hundreds of human volunteers, miners, deep-sea welders, construction workers, and other industrial specialists were training alongside elite military personnel. Your species continues to confound us, admitted Admiral Ixalan, watching a group practice with what looked like modified mining equipment. These are not soldiers. Why risk civilian lives? Chen watched as a former Antarctic Research Station engineer demonstrated how to secure equipment in extreme conditions. Because sometimes the best person to fight a war isn't a warrior, but someone who knows how to get impossible jobs done. These people have spent their lives working in environments almost as hostile as the void. But our simulations show a 40% casualty rate for any direct engagement with the void. Ixalan protested, his bioluminescent patterns flashing with concern. Then we'll make sure those sacrifices mean something, Chen replied quietly. On Earth, we have a long history of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when everything is at stake. The first test of humanity's approach came sooner than expected. A void incursion was detected at the edge of the Centauri sector, threatening a major Senate colony world. The Genesis arrived to find the planet's advanced defense systems already failing, the void consuming energy shields like they weren't there. All hands, battle stations. Chen's voice echoed through the ship. First wave deployment in 5 minutes. Remember your training and trust your equipment. Tal watched in horror as humans suited up in what looked like modified deep-sea diving gear. Those suits are practically primitive. The protection they offer is entirely physical, Maya interrupted, checking her own suit's seals. No energy systems for the void to disrupt. Just good old-fashioned pressure resistance and life support. Sometimes the best solution is to embrace the basics. The the deployment pods, designed by human engineers and built with Senate resources, launched toward the void's leading edge. They carried no energy weapons, no quantum devices. Instead, they were equipped with mechanical grapples, physical barriers, and specially designed tools that operated on simple physics. First contact in 3, 2, 1. Chen's voice was steady as the pods reached their target. Deploy anchors. The aliens watched in amazement as humans began literally building their way through the void's influence. Physical tethers were shot into affected structures, creating paths through space that didn't rely on artificial gravity or energy fields. Teams of industrial workers, protected by their pressure suits, began constructing a network of physical barriers that somehow remained stable, even as the void consumed everything energy-based around them. "It's working," Maya reported excitedly, monitoring readings from her mechanical sensors. "The void can't consume physical matter as quickly as energy. We're actually slowing its advance." But the operation wasn't without cost. Some suits failed, their occupants lost to the void's influence. Others suffered equipment malfunctions that would have been trivial to fix with Senate technology, but became life-threatening without it. Yet the humans pressed on, each team continuing their work even as they watched colleagues disappear into the darkness. "Why do they continue?" Call asked softly, watching another team push forward despite losing members. "The risk. Because that's what humans do," Chen answered, her voice firm. "We see something impossible, and we keep pushing until it becomes possible. Every industrial revolution, every scientific breakthrough, every step into space, they all cost lives. But we never let that stop us from moving forward." As the defensive line stabilized, Maya's team made another breakthrough. "The physical barriers aren't just slowing it down," she reported. "They're forcing it to interact with normal space-time. We can actually start to study its properties now." The Senate observers watched in stunned silence as humanity's primitive approach began to yield results that centuries of advanced technology had failed to achieve. Physical science, mechanical engineering, and sheer human determination were accomplishing what seemed impossible hours before. "Perhaps," Admiral Ixalan said thoughtfully, "we have been too quick to dismiss methods simply because they are not the most advanced. There is elegance in simplicity that we had forgotten." Chen nodded, watching as her teams continued their work. "That's another human saying. If it looks stupid but works, it isn't stupid. We learned long ago that survival doesn't care about elegance. It cares about results." The Senate training facility on Mars hummed with activity as beings from across the galaxy learned what humans called hands-on work. The irony that many species didn't even have hands wasn't lost on Captain James Rodriguez as he watched a group of ethereal lumini struggling to operate simple mechanical tools. "You must understand," explained Xiri, their crystalline form flickering with frustration. "We haven't physically manipulated objects in 10,000 years. Our technology does that for us." "That's exactly the problem," James replied, demonstrating the proper way to secure a support beam. "You've become so dependent on advanced technology that you've forgotten the basics. But the void strips away those advances, so we need to relearn the fundamentals." In the 3 months since the first successful defense against the void, humanity's approach had begun to spread throughout the Senate forces. The massive chamber now hosted training stations for everything from basic mechanical engineering to emergency suit repair. Species that once relied entirely on automated systems were learning to work with their own appendages again. In her lab aboard the Genesis, Dr. Maya Rivera was making another breakthrough. Her team, now including scientists from 15 different species, had been studying the void using increasingly sophisticated mechanical instruments. "It's not just consuming reality," she explained to the assembled research council. "It's trying to reshape it. Look at these mechanical stress patterns. They're not random. There's intelligence behind them." High Counselor Vexterra's fins rippled with concern. "You're suggesting the void is conscious?" "Not exactly," Maya replied, adjusting her old-fashioned glasses. but it's following patterns similar to natural evolution. Each encounter with our defenses changes its behavior, but those changes are constrained by physical laws we can understand and exploit. Commander Chen, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward, like an invasive species adapting to a new environment. Exactly. Maya's eyes lit up. And like any invasive species, it has to obey the rules of the ecosystem it's invading. We just need to understand those rules better than it does. The revelation sparked a new phase in the war. Humanity's experience with Earth's harsh evolutionary history provided insights that the Senate's advanced civilizations had never considered. They began approaching the void not as a technological problem to be solved, but as an environmental challenge to be managed. In the shipyards orbiting Jupiter, this new understanding was being put into practice. Senate engineers worked alongside human shipwrights, combining advanced alien materials with robust human designs. The result was a new class of vessel, the Terraform-class defense ships. They're not pretty, admitted Chief Engineer Hassan Patel, watching another ship take shape. But they don't need to be. They just need to work. Admiral Ixalan, now a staunch advocate of human methods, nodded in agreement. The ships looked brutally functional compared to the elegant Senate vessels, but they incorporated lessons learned from centuries of human industrial development. Physical backup systems, mechanical redundancies, and modular designs that could be repaired with basic tools. The Senate would never have conceived of such designs. Ixalan said, his bioluminescence pulsing with what humans had learned was appreciation. We always sought to rise above physical limitations. You've shown us how to work within them instead. The first real test of this new approach came at the Battle of Proxima Centauri. The void had evolved, developing new ways to consume matter faster, but the human-inspired defenses evolved too. When energy shields failed, physical barriers took their place. When quantum communications went dark, teams relied on line-of-sight signals and mechanical relays. Contact in Sector 7, called out Lieutenant Sarah Wong from her position in the Mechanical Control Center, a room that would have been considered primitive months ago, but now represented the perfect fusion of human ingenuity and alien material science. The void surged forward, its darkness seeming to bend reality itself. But this time, humanity was ready. Teams of mixed species, working in mechanically powered suits, deployed physical countermeasures. The void consumed energy weapons, but couldn't quickly break down the new metamaterials developed by the human-Senate collaboration. Hold the line. Commander Chen's voice carried across all frequencies. Remember your training. Trust your equipment and trust each other. The battle raged for hours, but slowly, inevitably, the defense line held. The void's attempts to consume reality were met with layers of physical resistance, each one buying time for the others to adapt and respond. It was a war of attrition fought with wrenches and welding torches instead of energy beams and quantum weapons. In her lab, Maya watched the sensor readings with growing excitement. It's working. The void is being forced to expend more energy breaking down our physical barriers than it can absorb from space around it. We're actually wearing it down. The Senate observers watched in amazement as the impossible began to happen. The void's advance didn't just stop, it began to retreat. Forced to interact with physical reality on humanity's terms, it found itself fighting a battle it wasn't equipped to win. I understand now, Kittle said softly, watching the battle unfold. Your species never forgot what we did, that the universe is fundamentally physical. All our advanced technology, all our energy manipulation, they're just tools to interact with that physical reality. By returning to basics, you've reminded us of something we should never have forgotten. Chen smiled grimly as another wave of defense teams launched toward the front line. Sometimes you have to go backward to move forward. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way on Earth. Now we're teaching it to the galaxy. Deep within the converted asteroid base humanity, now called the Workshop, Dr. Maya Rivera stared at her latest readings with growing excitement. 300 days into the war against the void, and they were finally beginning to understand their enemy. It's not just consuming reality, she explained to the assembled war council, her hands dancing over a complex mechanical model. It's trying to establish its own physics, like an invasive species attempting to terraform an environment to suit itself. The council chamber was itself a testament to how much had changed. Where once alien representatives would have floated in isolated environmental bubbles, now they sat or stood together, many wearing simplified versions of human environmental suits. They had learned that some discomfort was worth the ability to work directly with their tools and each other. Show them what we found in the Proxima battle, Commander Chen suggested, her once pristine uniform now bearing the marks of countless hours in the field. Maya nodded, adjusting her mechanical display. Watch the pattern here. She pointed to a series of ripples in the physical material they'd recovered. The void doesn't just consume energy. It converts it into something else. Something that operates under different universal constants. Like a parallel universe trying to overwrite ours, offered Kittle, who had become one of their most dedicated researchers. The crystalline being now wore a modified mining suit that let them directly handle equipment. Exactly, Maya beamed. And that's why our physical barriers work better than energy shields. The void has to completely convert matter to change its physics. It can't just absorb it like it does with energy. Admiral Ixalan's bioluminescence pulsed thoughtfully. Then the next question becomes, can we use this knowledge to do more than just defend? The question hung in the air. For months, they had been holding the line, protecting Senate worlds with their hybrid tactics and technologies. But the void was still out there, still threatening the galaxy's existence. In the station's massive engineering bay, Chief Engineer Hassan Patel was already working on an answer. Teams of humans and aliens swarmed over a massive device that looked like a cross between an oil drilling platform and a particle accelerator. We're calling it the Anchor, Hassan explained to High Counselor Vexterra during her inspection. It's designed to force the void to fully engage with our physics instead of just skirting the edges. Vexterra's fins rippled with interest as she studied the device. Like many Senate leaders, she had learned to appreciate the elegant functionality of human engineering. How does it work? By being incredibly stupid, Hassan grinned, or incredibly brilliant, depending on how you look at it. Instead of trying to fight the void's attempt to change our physics, we're going to help it, but on our terms. The plan was audacious. The Anchor would create a controlled zone where physical constants could be manipulated, essentially creating a bubble of space that the void would find irresistible. But unlike the chaotic physics the void tried to impose, this would be a carefully calculated environment. Think of it like a trap, explained Lieutenant Wong, who had become their lead tactical officer. We're creating a pocket of space that the void will try to consume, but we control the rules there. And once it commits to that space, we can begin to understand it on a fundamental level, Maya finished. Maybe even communicate with it. The idea sent ripples of shock through the Senate representatives. Communicate? Admiral Ixalan's bioluminescence flickered with surprise. You believe that's possible? Everything we've seen suggests the void is following patterns, Chen said, stepping forward. It's not random destruction. It's systematic, purposeful. That suggests intelligence, even if it's completely alien to us. And if there's one thing humans are good at, Maya added with a small smile, it's communicating with things that want to kill us. We've had plenty of practice on Earth. The construction of the Anchor became a galaxy-wide effort. Senate worlds provided exotic materials, while human engineers designed ways to shape them without relying on vulnerable energy tools. Species that had once looked down on physical labor now worked alongside human construction crews, learning to appreciate the satisfaction of building something with their own appendages. As they worked, Maya's team made another breakthrough. The void's physics aren't completely incompatible with ours, she announced one day, her excitement palpable. They're more like a different dialect of the same language. We've been treating it like an invader, but what if it's a refugee? The theory sparked intense debate among the council. The idea that the void might be less a malevolent force and more a displaced piece of reality, seeking a new home, changed the entire context of their war. If we're right, Chen said during a late-night strategy session, then the anchor isn't just a weapon. It's a bridge, a way to establish a stable interface between our physics and theirs. The project took on new urgency. In the depths of space, the void continued its advance, but now they weren't just fighting for survival, they were working toward understanding. Humanity's greatest strengths, their ability to adapt and to find common ground with the seemingly alien, were being put to their ultimate test. It's almost poetic, Catal observed, watching humans and aliens working together on the anchor. Your species' so-called primitive approach has led us to the most advanced understanding of reality we've ever achieved. That's the thing about humans, Chen replied, checking the mechanical seals on her suit. We never forgot that advanced doesn't always mean better. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. We just need to remember how to use them properly. The viewing chamber of humanity's Hope Station fell silent as the massive anchor device powered up for the first time. Through the reinforced physical windows, no energy shields here, they could see the void approaching. Its darkness seemed to bend the very fabric of space, consuming stars and leaving emptiness in its wake. All teams report ready, Lieutenant Wong announced, her hands moving across mechanical controls. The station itself was humanity's greatest achievement, a perfect fusion of Senate materials and human engineering principles, designed to survive even if every energy system failed. Commander Chen stood at the central command station, surrounded by representatives from across the galaxy. Dr. Rivera, status of the physics interface. Maya checked her instruments, all analog, all designed to function even in the face of reality-warping forces. The anchor is generating the predicted space-time distortion. If our theories are correct, it should create a stable interface zone between our physics and the voids. Should, muttered Admiral Ixalan, though his bioluminescence showed more anticipation than fear. Like many Senate officials, he had learned to trust human instincts. That's the thing about human science, Hassan called from his engineering station. Everything is should until someone's brave enough to try it. The void detected their presence. Its advance altered course, drawn to the pocket of distorted space-time like a moth to flame. This close, they could see patterns in its darkness, swirls and eddies that Maya's team had learned to interpret as signs of intelligence. It's responding exactly as predicted, Maya reported excitedly. The physics distortion is attracting it, but in a controlled way. We're actually establishing a gradient between our reality and its. Chen nodded grimly. Begin Phase 2. All teams, remember your training. Whatever happens next, we face it together. The anchor's massive mechanical arms began to move, adjusting the geometry of space itself through purely physical means. No energy weapons, no quantum fields, just precisely calculated shapes and movements that guided the forces of reality like a river changing its course. Contact in 3, 2, 1. The void touched the interface zone. For a moment, reality seemed to hold its breath. Then, everything changed. Where the two physics met, something new emerged. Not the chaotic consumption they'd seen before, but a structured interaction. Through their mechanical sensors, they could see patterns forming. Communication in the language of physical constants. It's working. Maya's voice was filled with wonder. We're seeing bidirectional physics translation. The void isn't trying to consume this space. It's trying to understand it. High Counselor Vexterra's fins rippled with emotion. Can we communicate with it? We already are, Maya replied, adjusting her instruments. Every action has a reaction. It's like teaching someone to dance by moving with them. We adjust our physics, they adjust theirs, and slowly we find a rhythm that works for both. The process was delicate. Teams of humans and aliens worked in perfect coordination, adjusting the anchor's mechanisms to maintain the stable interface. Each movement was a word in this new language they were creating, each adjustment a step toward understanding. Suddenly, Maya's instruments registered a massive shift. Something's happening. The void, it's changing its pattern. Through the windows, they watched in awe as the darkness began to take on structure. Not retreating, but transforming. Where once it had consumed reality, now it was weaving itself into it, finding ways to exist within their physics rather than overriding it. It was never about destruction, Chen realized, watching the transformation. It was about survival. A piece of reality trying to find a new home after losing its own. Just like humanity, Catal observed. Adapting to survive in hostile conditions, but this time we helped something else do the same. The next few hours were intense as they worked to stabilize the new equilibrium. The void wasn't gone. It had become something new, a hybrid space where both physics could coexist. Throughout the galaxy, the regions it had consumed began to transform, not returning to normal but becoming something unprecedented. In the aftermath, as the Senate gathered to assess what had happened, Maya presented her final analysis. "We didn't defeat the void," she explained. "We helped it evolve, just as humanity evolved to survive on Earth. And in doing so, we've expanded our understanding of reality itself." The Senate chamber, once a place of rigid separation, now hummed with the sound of diverse species working together without barriers. Physical tools lay alongside advanced technology, each used where it worked best rather than based on perceived sophistication. Humanity's greatest contribution wasn't your technology, or lack thereof, High Counselor Vexterra announced to the assembled representatives. It was your ability to see past conventional wisdom, to find solutions in simplicity, and to help others adapt rather than trying to destroy what you didn't understand. Commander Chen stood at the podium, her uniform still bearing the marks of hands-on work. "That's the real lesson of Earth," she said. "Survival isn't about being the strongest or most advanced. It's about being able to change, to learn, and to help others do the same. We didn't just survive our death world. We learned from it. And now we've helped the galaxy do the same." As she spoke, outside the Senate windows, the transformed void space shimmered with new possibilities. It was neither purely human physics nor void physics, but something new, proof that even the most fundamental differences could be bridged with enough determination, creativity, and willingness to get your hands dirty. The galaxy would never be the same, but then again, as humanity had learned long ago on their harsh cradle of Earth, change was just another word for opportunity.